Thanks, Cameron. Thank you very much. Yes, welcome to this session. I'm very pleased and very privileged to be here on behalf of the Foundation today. So, this session normally takes an hour and a half. I'm actually going to obviously reduce that for today, so I'll explain as I go along any shorter parts. Silent Killer. This was rolled out across TAFE colleges and other colleges last year, and we reached 1,000 students. But where did it come from? Well, I've done a lot of work with workers through various projects, and I kept hearing stories, and I thought, I've had enough of these stories. Why is it still happening? I don't want to hear any more. So I said to them, what have I got to do? And I said, Colette, you've got to get out to the young people, to apprentices and workers who are just new. And I said, right, that's what I'm going to do. So on behalf of the Foundation, we put this together. And obviously we've got our supporters there who've supported us with that project. Thank you to them. What am I going to cover today? I'm going to cover what it is, the health hazards, where you might find it, a little bit about the law, because there is a law and we need to know about that, and finally, how to communicate a hazard in the workplace. This is really important for young people to feel strong and empowered to do that. So, what it is, because there's a lot of myths and things about it, the health hazards, where you might find it, a bit about the law, and obviously how to communicate a hazard in the workplace. How am I going to do that? Okay, today I'm going to do that by, obviously, we have here a PowerPoint presentation. We've got images to show you of where you might find it in the workplace. I have a quiz at the end, but we might put that out afterwards on PDF, so you can check your knowledge. I have some sample pictures we're going to show you today. I can't show you, obviously, the live samples, but we do have them here. Questions and answers. I'm going to ask you a question or two, even though you're out there somewhere. And that's about it. That's how we're going to cover those objectives today. I was setting up like this a few weeks ago. I came in to set up, and there was a carpentry class going on, Cert 2. And I was with the tutor, and this young lad came in and he said, Sir, he said, this electrical unit, it smells like it's burning. And the tutor, Nathan, he said, thanks for that. Put that on there. We'll have it tested. That shouldn't have happened. We've got 14 new ones. Why has that happened? So Nathan just sat down and we started the class. And I thought that's a really good example of how to communicate a hazard in the workplace. Because he didn't make a big fuss with his mates in the workshop saying, oh, I'm not touching that, you know, it smells like it's burning. Didn't do that. He didn't go, oh, I'll just put that in the cupboard and I'm not going to say anything. He didn't do that. Okay, he walked straight in and assertively reported it. Why are people not doing that sometimes with asbestos? Why are they not doing it with some other hazards? We need to change that, and I know everyone's working really hard at that at the moment. So this is just awareness today to make you aware. It's not training or anything like that. And it comes from evidence of stories I've heard and people I've met. And I hope that you enjoy it. So, let's start. What is it? What is asbestos? So many people say, oh, Colette, I don't need to do that because I know all about it. But what is it? Have we forgotten what it is? I know some of you will be much more aware. Think about it. Think about 3 things that it is in your head right now. Okay. Let's see if you were right. Here's a few things about asbestos. I ask the classes sometimes, but not many people tell me that it's a naturally occurring fibrous mineral. Natural, in the ground. There's rock. There's asbestos ranges up north. It's a naturally occurring fibrous mineral. And up here as well, there's other things. Not many people tell me it's a class 1 cancer-causing agent. We know that now. And then we've got, obviously, other points up there. Did you get any right? Maybe you did. I hope you did. Obviously, it was a miracle product in its time, and it was widely produced, as you probably know, in your industry. You may not know that there's no minimum safe exposure level for any form of asbestos fibres. Now, that's from the World Health Organization. Obviously, in work practices, there are some levels, 0.011 millimetre, whatever. We're talking about fibres and been exposed to fibres once they're released. We'll come to that in a moment. There is no minimum level of exposure to those inhaled fibres. We don't know enough about it. Now, we're still on what it is. You're doing quite well, so hopefully you did get a few of those. 3 types. Forget the posh words, unless you actually want to learn them. They're up there if you want to see them. I'll just say the white, the brown, the blue. White, brown and blue. I'm going to walk in front of here, only because I like to walk around. But which one do you think is the most dangerous? Well, the answer is all of them. They're all asbestos. It doesn't matter what colour they are. Now, some workers say, bit of a myth, oh, the blue Colette's got big barbs on the end of the fibres and they hook in your lungs. You know, so the white one's all right, you can drill into that. No. They're all asbestos. They can all actually harm you and cause health issues, and sometimes worse. Okay, you know it was used widely. We're still on what it is. Let's move into the health issues. We've already covered what it is now. We're now moving into, well, why is it a hazard to health? What are those fibres doing? So, I've already explained, and I think this is very, very important, that it's when the fibres are released that it becomes hazardous to your health. Okay? I'm not saying it is in this building, but I don't know. You know, it's no point saying, oh, look, oh, I'm not going in that room, it's got asbestos on the wall. No, this is sealed, it's painted, bonded. That's fine. It's when the fibres are released that we start to hesitate about what we're doing. As a result of those fibres being released and inhaled, I'm not a health expert by any means, but on the outside of our lungs we have a very fine layer of lining, and basically we get a number of diseases from asbestos fibres. So, pleural plaques. A lot of people are walking around just with scarring of that lung tissue. Pleural plaques. That won't kill you, but over time, you know, that can cause problems later down the line. Asbestosis. Asbestosis. Now, this is where the lung hardens. And I'm afraid you never get that back. You can't say, oh, go to the doctor and get that back. So the capacity of your lung to breathe in and out is significantly reduced. We have a person on our who works with us as a volunteer and on our board. So he was going to get his lunch out of the car one day, and he was running across the car park just to get it, and he thought, I'm out of breath. Why am I out of breath? And just like that, obviously, he got it followed up and went to the doctor, and he has mild asbestosis. If that is severe, then the capacity of your lung will obviously decrease, and that's very similar to symptoms of emphysema. Now, we have written a publication, and you can get this on our website as well, Understanding Asbestos Diseases. And to be honest with you, even I didn't get it. I didn't really understand the impact of these diseases until I've met people, and I've heard so many stories now about loved ones who've actually died or been seriously ill. So I did go, I went to interview a couple of people, and that's where I met Jake. Now Jake actually had, he had mesothelioma. Now, don't know how many of you have heard of that, but this is where he didn't know until he was driving his lorry home one night, and he got a pain in his back here. And he thought, wow, my seat must need adjusting. So he pulled over and adjusted his seat, drove home, sitting in his chair later having a cup of tea, he told me. And he thought, I've still got that pain. What is that? And he went and had it checked out. And unfortunately, at La Trobe Hospital, they discovered a tumour growing on the lining of his lung. Now that is mesothelioma. There isn't a cure for that, I'm afraid. So these diseases can be caused by the inhalation of asbestos fibres. There's no cure for mesothelioma, and we want people to just be aware of that, very aware, because I've now met people and spoken to them, and their whole family have been devastated by the loss of someone. To culminate that story, I've got a picture of Jake at the end, and I won't show the leaflet now because it wouldn't be effective in this environment. I went to Jake's funeral at the end of April, and he was 63. And I've met him a few times, and it is not right that someone of that age is dying. So that's the other thing about asbestos. Now, what happened with Jake was that fibre works its way all the way down the lining into the alveoli, right at the bottom of your lungs. There's these tiny, microscopic particles on the end of to pump your oxygen round. I'll do the best I can, but actually that lodges in there, and you can't see those with the naked eye. That fibre is smaller than those alveoli, and so it works its way down, and it sits there, and as some of you will know, it sits there for a long time before it can erupt into a disease. So we're looking at 15 to 40 years before somebody can get ill. So I've met electricians, I've met people now who've lost their mates in their early 60s, because I've just done this across all of TasTAFE, and I've heard too many stories. It's too early. It's 20 years off your life, and you want to retire, you've worked all your life. That is not funny. And I'm putting it mildly, because it does affect you when you meet people or someone in your family, so don't let it happen. Right, so made that point. Now, what was the quote? I wonder if you can remember that. There is no minimum safe level of exposure to asbestos in any form. World Health Organization. Try to remember that. Get that in there, and then that may impact on what you do next. Okay, so we've covered what it is. We've moved into the health issues. And we're still going to just make a point about what the Medical Research Council has noted. You can read that for yourselves. I've spoken to firefighters who've been into fires, like Dunalley, and what's left on the hills? What is left? This stuff. So we're going to come across it. We can't get rid of it, overnight. It's not possible, and it's not realistic. So just be aware of it. That's all that I'm trying to make the point of here. It is insidious, it's toxic, and it is really persistent. Now, I've done this with some workers, and I had a worker who once said to me, Colette, you're making a big fuss. You know, you've got foundation. There's probably only a couple of people dying. What are you making a fuss about? Well, apart from the fact I've met people now, so even one of you out there who dies too early from this exposure, that is not fair. But actually, we've got quite a few. So I'll just put it into perspective very quickly for you. Sorry. I asked this question. Some of you out there, you may know how many, and it was men in World War I, mostly men, predominantly men. Australians, how many Australian men do you think died in World War I? Have a guess. Okay, I've had various guesses, you know, from way low to way high. We've got a very small population in Australia, don't forget, and in World War I it was really small. 60,000. 60,000. So not hundreds, thousands. Now that was 15% of the male population in Australia, so it made a big dent. Now, I just want to put this into perspective. I thought I'd bring it up to date, and in May 2015, WorkSafe itself had a report out, 12 a week are dying. And that was figures from, here it is here, from 2015 report going back to 13. Now the thing about this disease, and we said stop the next wave, it comes in waves, these deaths. First lot was about 20,000, I think it was 19,000. Big wave of deaths, because it takes so long to emerge. Who do you think was the first wave? I hear some of you saying it was the miners and the people who worked in the factories making the products. Absolutely right. They're the first wave. Second wave, who's the second wave? Who are they? Well, they're the people who installed all the stuff, the people who worked with it, the builders, the carpenters, the electricians, the plumbers, the floor tilers, the tyre fitters. They're the next wave. They're the people who are feeling it right now. You think that would be enough, wouldn't you? But no, that is not enough. There's a third wave. I bet some of you may think about it, but we need to get serious with this. There is a third wave. I'm holding this up. You may not be able to see it. It's the home renovators. DIY enthusiasts, but we have been supported by DIY outlets, and we've put out 15,000 of these booklets. So a lot of you will do home renos. A lot of you will have family who do that. You can download this free on our website. It's got images, it's got where to go, what to do. So that's a useful publication. And we've got one coming out for tradies very, very soon, next month. They're the third wave, it's recognised. We don't know enough, as I say, because that third wave, you know, one exposure, we can get mesothelioma. We've had a couple of women have died recently from helping their parents do DIY when they were younger, 7 and 8 years old. A woman of 48 just died. We don't know enough, so it's not worth it. There's not enough studies been done. Why would the plumber who's worked with it for 40 years not get ill, and his partner who put the washing in the washing machine has got ill? I was quite shocked the other week because I saw a metal fabricator. He's the tutor, and he said, "Colette, do you know what? I had a mate and he lost his wife with mesothelioma." He said, "But that wasn't the worst of it. His daughter got it as well." He didn't get it. What is that telling you? Is it telling you anything? Because it's starting to sort of sink in for me, and it really has sunk in now. We don't know enough, and it's highly dangerous. Could be a biological reaction. We don't know. Obviously, higher exposure, we know asbestosis, etc., is longer term higher exposure, but mesothelioma, we don't know. So, there's the figures to put it into perspective for you. This is onto the clues. We've covered what it is, the health hazards. Now, here's where you might find it. And we're going to begin with some clues for you. Look at this. Look at it. I won't show how upset I am here. But this is the timeline. So we started churning it out in the factories. 40 years. And that's okay. It was a miracle product. It made lots of things out of it. It was prolific. But they realised, but of course in other countries we realised a bit earlier, 84, let's stop it. Let's stop making it. Let's shut those factories down. 84. But what happened was they stockpiled it, and they could still use it because it wasn't banned in Australia. Can you believe it? I should have asked you to guess. 2002. And of course, for laws, it's 2003 because we left it a year to ban imports. So that timeline is a clue for you people out there who work with it and work in different buildings. Okay? 2003, end of story in Australia. All right, so we're still on where we might find it and looking at the clues. How do you know it's asbestos? Well, here's another couple of clues for you. They didn't make 200 products. Maybe 500,000, no. 3,000 identified products out there that have been identified. 3,000. So that's another clue. How do you know? How could we possibly know that? And the other thing is that we do kind of know as well now is that any house or building built before 1990 is likely to have it. You can pretty much probably put your money on that it's going to be in there somewhere if it's built before that date. And the reason is I showed you the timeline earlier, because 84 they stopped manufacturing it, so it starts to peter out after that. It starts to get less and less prevalent, but it could still be in certain places until that end date. But this is where it's likely to be. Now, I only usually quote, well, I do quote facts and figures, and I can't put it on here, but I have heard it's 67% likely to be there if it was built before 1990. I can't prove that. I saw that and read that somewhere. Okay. Now, I'm going to leave that last point for a minute because I want to, at this point, I'd usually actually show you examples of asbestos containing materials. And I've got some with me here today, and what we're going to try to do is we've taken some photos, because that's the best I can do for you out there, and we can just flick through some. I think the first one, if I get them in the wrong order, my chap up there will tell me. But lino backing. Yeah, we've got a bit of lino. Now, it's funny because I've got pictures as well coming up shortly and we'll go through it, but it's in the backing. It's not in the lino itself. It's in that backing. The minute you start pulling that lino up comes that dust. Now, I suppose at this point I should mention, and it's not a technical course and it's not training, but there's friable asbestos and there's non-friable or bonded, I showed you earlier. And the definition of friable is if you can crumble it between your finger, your middle finger and your thumb, pulverise it, it is dust or dust already, that is friable asbestos, and that is the most dangerous format. So it's not in the lino, but what do you think that's like on the back? The next one is millboard. Now, give you a clue here because we're going to look at a few. One of these I'm going to show you is 98% containing of asbestos. And another one on here, I hope I've got it here, I might not have it, or I have, is 100% asbestos containing. And the others, you know, so we're looking at friable, bonded, have a guess. Millboard. Often confused with cement sheet. It can be in wet areas, okay, wet areas, heat areas, but usually instead of cement sheet, we've found it in bathrooms and places like that. Now, I don't know if you can see it in the picture, but have a guess at that. Have we got the floor tile next? Have we got our floor tile? Great. Floor tile, it's all working. Vinyl tiles, they're very common. It is in the tile, it is in there. But the worst bit, and I'll tell you later, it doesn't actually matter now about percentages, but under it is something that's commonly known as blackjack glue. That's under the tile, it's in the glue. You start pulling those up, leave them, here, leave them, they're fine. Start pulling them up, alarm bells. Okay. Roof shingle? No, we haven't got roof shingle, but I've got one here in my hand, but never mind. Cement sheet. What have you got next?
Air conditioning ductwork.
Okay. Air conditioning, like it's the duct, the mastic. It's in the mastic sometimes. So all like fabricators and that, and when it's glued onto the wall, that can get really old. If it's old, you know, obviously the year of it is important. People don't really know that. There is a gasket here, and that's found in a lot of electrical units and other boilers, etc., cars, all of that. That's a gasket. Electrical board I've got here. I've got a number, but we can't show you them on the camera. It doesn't work. It's better that you can see it. And cement sheet. You can hear that. It's really hard. Okay. Millboard. No, doesn't do that. And window putty. Usually in those 60s windows that are metal. Now, we've got rope. Lots of samples that I can't actually show you today of different products, thousands of products. Couldn't do it. Now, with this millboard, Martin, I don't know if you can just share it with me saying it, but I asked you to guess. One of them on here is 100% that we've mentioned, I mentioned, you didn't see a picture, and one is 98%. We were going to sort of do a text thing, but we won't. I mean, basically, I'm going to get you to guess. But I'm hoping already you realise Millboard is 98% containing of asbestos. So when I began my workshops, I've already changed this sample twice because the pieces were one piece and already it has crumbled down to that, just from people looking at it. So it's very different to cement sheet. You see that's still intact. It's just broken around the edges there. It's not intact actually, but anyone guess the gasket? I've only had 4 correct guesses out of 1,005 people. The gasket is made from 100% asbestos fibres because they just compress it like that. Now, just to be clear about the fibres, I thought someone had eaten their lunch one day, one of the apprentices, and come back and put their greasy hands on this bag. I thought, who's done that? Anyway, I better clean it. And when I went to the lab, you know, my guy at the lab, he says, Colette, no, you're not getting it. They're the fibres you can't see. He puts one fibre under a microscope and 20 or 30,000 more are around it. They're the fibres, it's like a mist. It's, you know, that bag should be clean and clear. It is like dirt and a mist. You can't see those fibres. So they're the ones you can't see. Just letting you know. Because I learned that a few months ago as well. I was quite shocked by that. So, how do I know? Well, I can guess all I like. I've done it myself in a house I bought. I can keep guessing. I can go, is that cement sheet? Is it old? Is it new? Is that... You will get good at guessing, and some of you, I'll show you images in a moment, you will recognise them, and you'll be pretty good. But you have to be trained in the identification of asbestos, and it must be tested in a lab, and it has to be NATA accredited, that lab. That's like international accreditation. So it's a simple lab test that has to be done, and that will be given back to you with a result. It will probably tell you whether it's chrysotile or what the type is. And do you know what? They used to put the percentage, because I got one a few months back, or probably a year now, over a year actually. They don't put that anymore. They don't give you the percentage because it's not important once the fibres are released. It's irrelevant. So now NATA accreditation does not require a percentage. Okay, we're going to whiz through some images now. I hope the lighting is all right for these images. I mean, usually I turn the lighting down, but here's some samples of where you might find it at work. And I'm going to flick through them, obviously due to our time. And see how you go. Have you seen any of these? And I might just pop a couple of comments in as we go. There's the old shed. Super 6 roofing. You know, this used to come off in moulds at the factories, off the, you know, mixed together with usually cement, dust. Off that would come off the roller. Now, I'm making a point about this sheet because I was packing up from a workshop once, and I'm not joking, it was a business, but I won't say which business it was. But the guy all went out, and this guy waited, and he came back to me, and he was 6 foot, he's got to be 6'4", and he came to the desk where I was packing up, and he said, Colette, I said, yep, can I help you? And he said, I haven't been the same bloke since I was in a roof space, and I got exposed to dust in the roof space. And I said, mate, sit down a minute, shut the door. And I had to actually, we followed up with support, we offered him numbers, and he's 6'4", he's a big guy, and he said, Colette, I've got 2 kids, I can't sleep at night, I keep thinking about it. It's in my body and I can't get it out. And if there's one thing about today that I hope you do leave with, is it is not fair to put anyone in front of it. And even yourself, actually, because you're the only ones today who can make that decision. It is not fair because it messes with your head. Not everybody. We all react to incidents differently. WorkSafe will tell you that. We all react differently. But it is not fair. And many workers who are now in their 50s and 60s say to me, Colette, on and off throughout my life, I've worried about it because I used to cut it with a saw and I used to do whatever. It is in and out of their mind because it's in your body, you think. You think. It may not be, and you may never get ill. But in that roof space, I'm going to point this out. This is old. This is 40 or 50 years old, this roof space. It rains, it's windy, and it's coming down those grooves like a river, and it's ending up in there. And the roof is like that, and there's a gap, an air gap, and all that dust collects inside that roof. So if you see that on a roof, hazard. It should actually say it, but there are still many of these around. It's inside, around the edge. And you go in and you're walking on the rafters and all the dust is coming up. You're doing some work up there, electricians in particular, plumbers. And I won't forget that chat because it's not good for your mind. It can cause mental health. We had a session before this on mental health at work. It is very important to think about that. Okay, keep going. Pipes, tiles on the roof, shingles, flexible building boards. That looks modern to me, but there you go. It's in those flower pots there as well, I think. I'll show them in a minute. Guttering and downpipes. There's the roof, another one, but that, can you see it's worn in the corner, and that used to be in good nick once. It was bonded once, now it's not. It has actually become more friable. Telstra pits were made, and they're still out there, and the guys doing communications have to be trained. There's your vinyl floor tiles. Okay, we've spoken about those, but of course it is also in the glue that's underneath. We talked about the lino. It's not in the lino, it's in the backing. And can you see that backing? Very soft, and as soon as you pull that up, the dust is coming upwards. That is an example of the millboard that I showed you earlier and we spoke about. Textiles, felts, gloves, protective equipment. It is heat resistant, it is water resistant. It's going to be in those places. So again, alarm bells when you go into those places. We've got the gaskets, and actually told you about one of those. Imitation brick cladding. It's in the backing board of those. That's a really bad situation. Lagging is already friable. It just comes up that way because they didn't mix it with very much at all, I don't think, at all. So that's known as friable. You can see the bottom of the pipe in the left-hand picture. I don't know if you can, but it is already damaged, and that situation on the right is not a situation you want to be walking through. Heat shields in the fuse, that's that heat shield, that's friable. It's just like cotton wool in there, it looks like. And the 3 electrical boards. So, yeah, I've had lots of electricians tell me that's what they used to do as apprentices, was make the holes and drill the holes in this sort known as Zelemite. There's other products, names. Zelemite board, his job was to drill in that, and I remember a guy, Tony, told me about his mate he met every year at the festival and didn't turn up one year, so he rang home and spoke to his wife, June, I think her name was, yeah, and she said, I'm really sorry, he died 3 months ago with mesothelioma. He used to meet him every year, and he was just sitting in the room with me and told me that story. Again, impactful. He was 52, he was an electrician. That's what he used to do. federal board in the middle and another similar board. So we'll come to safe work practices in a moment, so you wouldn't be touching those nowadays. And insulation around boilers. Okay, so we've covered what it is, the health hazards, where you might find it. We've done a couple of little samples close up in pictures, and we've looked at images on the board. Now we're going to move in to our next section, which is the law. A little bit about the law. It's a shame, really, isn't it? It's a shame they had to bring in a law. Hate that. I like it when people make the right decisions and they do the right thing. We don't need policing and laws. But it's been in since January the 1st, 2013. And WorkSafe obviously have codes of practice. It's very, very clear. Those codes are there. There are safe work practices in those codes in how to control and manage asbestos in the workplace. And there's another one about how to safely remove asbestos. You have to be trained in those safe work practices, and you have to be trained to remove it and to identify it. And it's around from the beginning to the end, even to disposal, you have to know what you're doing. And if you don't know by now why, because I've told you, that is why there's a law, because it's toxic. It contaminates things and clothes, and it can shut down a workplace for weeks if you do the wrong thing. So you may as well do it properly and professionally and look after people. Then you don't have, it takes a day. It can take a few hours to get a test result back, literally. And it costs between $75 and maybe $100 for a test. So it's not expensive in the scheme of things. So these are the new laws. Now, I haven't got an image to show you, but they're orange, the safe work practices. I'll just show you. I don't know, we probably can't get that, but they look like that. Is that okay? That's the one I'm talking about here. That's how to manage and control asbestos in the workplace, and there's the other one about removal. But I've got something I want to say to you now about this law. I just want to make you aware that there is a law. It's not my job to go through the law bit by bit today. That isn't my job. Go to WorkSafe, you'll find those codes. You'll find everything that you need. But even so, you still have to have training. So, and TASTAFE and people like that offer training. So what I'm going to do now, because of the time, I would normally go into this in more detail. I'm actually, you'll have to forgive me, but I'm going to flick through and give you the main points on these next slides. And we've got an opportunity for questions at the end via text, so happy to go into more detail then. So, one of the biggest changes is that, the employer, that's their fault, leave it with them. I'll go and rip all that up, leave the dust and go on to my next job. Get in the ute, off I go. No, you can't do that. You have a duty of care under this law. So, the lagging, can't open the door and, no. You can't just go off and leave it, because there are rules under this, because you could be a PCBU, which is a person conducting a business or undertaking. That could be you now. Even if you're in a big work site and you're up doing the bathrooms up in Unit 2, that could be you. So that's the biggest change in this law. That's the definition, but I'm now going to flick on to the next slide. There are regulations about identification, and you can't just sort of guess and say to someone, no, you're right, that's not asbestos. You go ahead and drill into that. No. Do you know what you're talking about? Does the person you're with know what they're talking about? It has to be a competent person, okay? And the one thing I absolutely love about this law, for young people and new apprentices is, if you're not sure, you can assume the presence of it. I told you about the dates of the building. Do you think, well, it's built in 84, it's got all that stuff. I've seen that in that picture. No, I think that might be asbestos. You are allowed to assume it is before it's analysed. You don't do it after you've drilled into it. You can stand back and say, I don't feel safe touching that. I just want to know, make sure what it is first. Okay, under the law you're protected and you can do that. So I really like that about the law. Assume the presence until it's analysed. Signage, I'm just showing you those examples at the bottom, you know, but at the end of the day, in that room, you open the door, there's all that lagging dust everywhere on the floor. You're like, oh, I'm not going in there, shut that, go to that other job. No, you can't do that. You think, I've got to get a bit of paper. I haven't got any labels in my bag. Tell the site manager, tell whatever your procedures are at work, follow those. But you should label that. You should leave a label, do not enter, until that is checked out. Until you've rung the site manager or your own manager, you cannot leave that situation. Where it is reasonably practicable to do so, you should be putting a label on there for the next person. And some of you will see these labels when you remove a roof tile to put the lights in. You may see one that's been done before you were there. It helps the next person. Okay, register. There are registers now. Only, and you can tell me why, only for commercial buildings, unfortunately, at the moment. We'd like to change that to houses as well. Commercial building built before December 31st, 2003. Why that date? Why is it that date that a building must have a register? Hopefully you're saying to yourselves, oh, that date, I remember that, 2003. That's when it was banned in Australia. Imports were banned by that date. So that's why. And you have a right to see a register when you go to work. I think the Asbestos Safety and Eradication Agency just did a study, and not many workers get to see a register. So you have to ask if you can see it, and then you know where it is, what condition it's in, and you can start to work on different practices. Now, is it this point? No. Okay, obviously, we've spoken about why. This is a warning from the code. You cannot use high pressure hoses, drills, because it releases fibres. It makes sense, okay? It makes sense to me. Now, that brings me to a safe work practice code. A safe work practice from the code. I just have to, I hope I've got it here somewhere to show it to you. It's in the handout, that's it. I put it in the handouts for people here. We haven't got an image of it to put up here, but I've got the register there. But I'm just going to, literally, this is all I want to do is make you aware. This is Safe Work Practice 1 from that code. Drilling of an asbestos cement sheet, for example. It's drilling of an ACM. 54 steps. There are 54 bullet points, and that's why it's not a simple process, okay? And you can't use your drill and things like that. It has to be there have to be control measures, and I'm not going to go into them. I'm just saying, here's your mask, here's your overalls. I bought them at Bunnings. They're asbestos proof. You can get them. There you go. Off you go. Drill that. Cut that out. Put that. Is that enough? Is that okay? Just asking that question, because it's not. You have to follow every single step on there. I'll tell you why. And just a quick sort of cartoon. You can't use a drill. You've got to have a cup. You've got the gel, you've got the cup, you've got a hand drill, you've got to have your mask on, your overalls on, you've got to have 5mm double wrap plastic bag here. You've got to have the tape ready. You've got to wipe yourself down after because the dust will collect in the cup. And you've got to put all of that and everything. They're just some of the steps you have to follow, because we were talking earlier about the partners who did the washing. They've died with mesothelioma. We've had kids who've hugged their parents in their overalls, have got ill and died with diseases because their clothes are contaminated. The area gets contaminated. Doesn't mean you can't do the job. You can, but you must be trained in safe work practices, and they're in there. And if it has to be removed, you have to have a licensed removalist to remove it, or you contact an occupational hygienist who can take samples for you. There are people there to help you. Okay. Obviously, if you want more information about the codes, there they are. That's the safe work practice codes that are on their website. Very clear and very easy to get hold of. We have a website as well, and I'll show you that in a moment. We've got more information about what I've spoken about today on there. You can download that booklet for free. If anyone's doing DIY, feel free to do that. But just remember, because it says at the bottom there, if you're involved in that work, or you've got people at work who deal with it a lot of the time, have them trained. Have someone trained in your business, or call someone who is. Call a professional in. That's our line. That is what we're going to stick to, because we don't want any more stories about exposure. I've covered what it is, the health hazards, where you might find it. We've looked at the law, and I've covered just briefly some aspects of the law there, and we've looked a little bit at one safe work practice from the code. I'm just going to show you those websites there for more information. There are other, I think there's one other lab available. There are labs available, and there are many removalists available across the state. You just go onto the WorkSafe website and it gives you a list of removalists in your area. However, there is a lab here. They will gladly help you on the phone, or come and take a test for you back within 24 hours. That's for more information. Now, just going to put this up while I talk about this. This is Jake, who I told you about earlier. Absolutely lovely man. And obviously died at 63 in April this year. I really, I can't impress on you enough. That is wrong. It is not fair. Okay? Now, he worked with it years ago, and it come back to haunt him from probably in his 20s or 30s, and now 40 years later, he gets this horror. You don't want to be dying with that disease, because Julie's husband, Brian, was diagnosed at the same time. Brian, he died at 64, 5 months later. Don't want any more stories like that from Julie either. I interviewed her too. Wonderful person. And what they're saying, look, education is the key, Jake said to me, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm passionate about it. It is the key. We want you to be aware that something can happen further down the line, and apart from that, you're going to be worrying about it. You could be worrying about it on and off in your head, before anything, which it may never happen. It's not that. It's the mental sort of torment from exposure. And don't get me wrong, I've actually seen young people who've told me already. From that workshop, I've already experienced stories from 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds. I even had a 16-year-old who was at a pre-employment. Already, they're telling me, and they didn't like it, and they didn't say anything and they wished they had said something. Now at this point, I normally get people into pairs. This is what I did with the students. I had 1,005 stand up and do a role play for me, and not one person said no. And I'd get them into A and B, and you can do this, if you're watching, you can do this with your employees, you could show them this, and then you could do this with them. A's the employer, B's the employee, and you just get them to, one of them is going to give the other one a job that involves asbestos. That's it. You tell this person to do a job and it involves asbestos, and they have to say no. No, I'm not doing it. Now, they might not say it like that, but, you know, they might say, oh, look, could we, I think that might be asbestos, mate. You know, could we get it tested? I've heard all sorts of things, really clever things coming from young people. It gave them practice at saying it, so they weren't put on the spot. Oh, come on, mate, get on with that. It's never done me any harm. Go on, it's the white stuff, be fine. You know, sometimes the pressure is too much at work, and that has to stop. So I'm trying to get young people to be stronger about saying, no, I don't feel safe doing that, I'm not doing it. Yeah, it's hard. And then you swap them over so that they get a chance of being the employer, putting the pressure on someone to do it. So you just do that role play. I think it's very effective. It takes like 3 minutes. It's so effective. And I have to say, as a result of that silent killer program, 97% of young people in their evaluations said they would challenge an employer who asked them to deal with asbestos. We haven't done this today, but I also showed them case studies. They read 3 real-life case studies of people I've interviewed who've been through an experience. So it gave them that empowerment to stand up for themselves, and I hope they do. And I hope that if you're an employer out there, that you'll consider maybe not asking anyone in the first place. And there are procedures now. There are brilliant companies, professional companies, who follow all the right steps. I'd like to thank you very much for listening. I've covered hopefully a bit more about what it is, the health hazards, where you might find it, a little bit about the law, and I've told you about the communication, how important that is. And I'd like to end, because I haven't done the role play and I haven't got that today. We made a film at the end of the project, and I thought we'd end with that film, and I'll show you what those young people, that was their message that they wanted to get out after the programme. And it's a positive message. It's about all of us working together to change things for the future. Thank you very much.
If you are an employer and you ask an employee to remove, dump or handle asbestos, you can expect them to say,
"Sorry mate, I think that's asbestos. I'm not handling that."
It's the law, mate. You've got to get it tested.
Sorry, I'm not qualified to do that.
You've got to be trained to handle that. Sorry mate, I can't do that for you.
so please don't ask.
Because we are ready to say
No.
You can help us to stop the next wave.